Well, a crowd can turn in a matter of seconds from cheering to jeering. And that is exactly what happened at UF's graduation when an usher pulled some students right off the stage. Now you can weigh in on our website, firstcoastnews.com/vote, and have your say.
So that video you just saw there, a lot of you are talking about it on social media. I'm here in our social media center where that video is going viral right now. It shows a University of Florida faculty member pushing minority students off the stage during a graduation ceremony. Our Honey Rodriguez has the pomp, circumstance, and controversy surrounding this story.
I spoke with two students who were pushed off stage and told me they were here to celebrate their achievements. Instead, they felt they were targeted because of their skin color, and an apology just isn't enough.
Personally calling to apologize to each one of those because they were physically constrained and physically rushed across the stage.
In a voicemail, University of Florida's president apologized to students who were grabbed and pushed by a faculty member on stage at Saturday's graduation. The viral video shows graduates Oliver Taluzma and Nafisa Atta, among others, dancing in their caps and gowns as they walked across the stage. Then they are grabbed and shoved off stage by a faculty member. More than a dozen students were also reportedly rushed off stage.
I was really appalled and a little disheartened of how I was handled. You know, I've never been touched by anyone, let alone an older man like that.
What if that was your own child? Would you let someone put their hands on your child in that manner?
University officials tell me they have not yet released the name of the faculty member involved in the incident, but it is under review. In the meantime, UF's president has ordered any faculty and staff not to touch any graduates on stage. For now in Gainesville, I'm Honey Rodriguez, First Coast News on your side.